Hello y'all, it's Megan and this video is on the skirt construction and adding it to the bodice of the Persephone pattern. If you want to see the bodice construction or maybe you did the romper option, then I will link those videos down below. The first step is going to be to take your facing piece and put it right sides together with your back skirt, and you are going to stitch them together along the top with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you have the facing sewn to the skirt, then you are going to press that seam up toward the facing, and you are going to understitch so that the facing does not flip right side out while you or your little one is wearing it. Then you're going to want to finish the raw edge of the facing. You can either finish it with your serger by not cutting any off or with a zigzag stitch. Once it's finished, then take it to your ironing board and press the facing toward the wrong side of the skirt. And then you are going to edge stitch that facing in place to create the elastic casing. You are either going to stitch 1 1/8 inch from the top for 1 inch elastic, or you're going to stitch 5/8 inch away from the top if you're using 1/2 inch elastic. Next, it's time to thread our elastic. Just a little tip, I do like to cut my elastic about 1 inch longer than the tutorial, so I have a little tail on each end of the elastic to cut off, and it makes stitching this easier. So using your favorite threading tool, go ahead and start threading that elastic through the casing before you pull the elastic all the way through. Once it gets to the end, then just go ahead and stitch the elastic in place to hold it. Then continue pulling the elastic through till you get to the other side, and then stitch it in place on the other side. If you left a little tail, go ahead and trim your elastic. This next part is optional, but I do like to do it. I like to make sure that my elastic is almost flat into the seam allowance, or you can go 1 to 2 inches more than that so that the elastic isn't gathering until it's a little bit further back from the side seam. I found that if I didn't do this step, then I kind of had a little elastic bulge at the side seam that I didn't love. So on each side, I just made sure that the elastic again was almost flat for a few inches, and then I stitched directly on the elastic to hold it in place. Then another option you can do, you can wait till the end if you want and try it on and see, but you can stitch down the center of the elastic to hold it in place so it doesn't flip, or just to give the appearance that you have several elastic threads or shearing. I do like to use a longer triple stitch when I stitch down the center of the elastic, so I make sure that I'm not losing any of the elasticity of the elastic. Then I like to take it to my iron and just pop it with a little bit of steam. Next, we're going to attach the back and front skirts. So you're going to place them right sides together, and you're going to measure 1/2 inch from the top edge, and that is where you're going to start your back skirt. You need that 1/2 inch edge to attach the front skirt to your bodice later. So you're just going to align them from the hem to that 1/2 inch point and pin them together. And you're going to do this on each side, and then you will stitch them together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then you want to finish the edge. You do want to make sure that you're finishing that. I know it's a tiny little 1/2 inch on the front skirt, but you want to finish that portion as well. Then it's time to attach our front skirt to the front bodice. So you're going to find the center of your skirt and front bodice, and you're going to put them right sides together. And then I like to pin them together at the side seam of the bodice and that little 1/2 inch edge that you have on your skirt piece. And then you will just ease the rest of the skirt in. If you're having trouble easing your skirt in, it should be a 1-to-1 ratio, but if you maybe cut it funky or your fabric stretched out a little bit, which wovens will do when cut on the bias, you can go ahead and add a gathering stitch at the top of your skirt to help ease in the skirt to the bodice. So you'll just pin it together and then you're going to sew this front skirt to the front bodice from side seam to side seam with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then you're going to press that seam up toward the bodice. Now we need to attach the lining piece. So you're going to roll your skirt up toward the bodice and you're going to put your lining piece right sides together to your main pieces, aligning all the seams and raw edges. And your skirt is going to be tucked inside in the center. And then you're going to sew around the entire bodice, the ties, the top with the straps between, the bottom with the skirt between, and you're going to leave a small 3 to 4 inch hole on, I like to leave it on this back side of the bodice along the bottom, and we're going to flip and turn our entire dress out from that hole. Before you flip it right sides out, you do want to trim your seams down and clip your corners and that center V. I like to use my pinking shears for this step. And then you're going to turn it right side out from that little hole and press your corners out with your Then you're going to give it a really nice press, and you're going to see that all the bodice and waist seams are beautifully enclosed. Then you need to close that little opening we left to flip it right sides out. So you can do this with a ladder stitch, or if you want, you can go ahead and top stitch the entire bodice if you like. The final step, if you did the ruffle like me, is going to be to sew your ruffle pieces together at the short end so you have one long loop. Then you will hem the bottom of your ruffle. I love to do a rolled hem, and I have a video on how to do that linked below. Then you will put a gathering stitch at the top of your ruffle. I like to run two, one at 1/4 inch and one at 5/8 of an inch, and then split the bottom hem into quarters or 8/16, whatever you want, and match the ruffle to that hem, matching all those quarter points with the right sides together, and stitch it with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then go ahead and finish that seam and press it up towards the dress and top stitch if you like. If you did any other version besides the midi with ruffle, then you would go ahead and hem the bottom of your dress or peplum with a 1/2 inch hem allowance. And then your Persephone is complete. This is such a beautiful and really an easy, quick sew. If you have any questions, you can leave them down below and I will try to answer them. If you make one, we would love to see it posted in our Facebook group or tag us on Instagram at Made for Mermaids, #Made for Mermaids Patterns, #Persephone Pattern.